So let's begin with our fourfold boundless aspirations. May all beings always have happiness and its causes. May all beings always be free of pain and its causes. May all beings always be pain-free and live happily. May no beings ever cling to those near nor spurn those far. For as long as space abides, as long as the world remains, just so long may I be there, resolving all beings' pain. Let that aspiration, the energy of that aspiration, the colors of that aspiration, if you relate to it that way, the vibration of that aspiration, however you might relate to what it feels like to you tonight, to enter into that aspiration or have a conversation with that aspiration. Feel what that feels like to you and let it nourish your body. Just flow all the way through you. This very, very beautiful, really amazing, stunning, and utterly simple aspiration. May all beings always have happiness, never have pain or the causes of it. Just probably anything you feel is subtle. And it may be in your mind, it may be in your body, it may be in your imagination, it may be in a sense of aspiration or inspiration, or it may be a sense of, no, I don't feel that way. Whatever it is, these offerings to ourselves, which is really what these songs are, at least in part, they impact us in some way. So just I invite you to feel it.
Oh, and you don't actually have your mic on.
Yeah, I've gotten so used
We
to.
just thought you were speaking so quietly.
Okay, thank you for reminding me. I've gotten used to sitting here without this microphone. But now, anyway, yeah, I'll let that aspiration be in you, however it is in you. It'll take a moment to settle together, to settle alone in our own spaces, alone, not lonely, connected. And this aspiration, which is boundless, as it impacts your body, which has form and therefore boundaries, and also impacts your mind, which has no form and therefore no boundaries. Just invite you to notice how that is. Don't assume that there's a dramatic impact, but something, perhaps. That somehow every cell of your being is included in this aspiration or in the curiosity about what your actual connection to that aspiration is. And then when you feel done with that, let go of it completely. Let your mind just be open and free, not particularly busy with anything except whatever it makes itself busy with, but maybe even letting go of that and feeling your body settle like a lake which has been stirred by the wind, and then the wind stops and the water begins to settle. And as the water settles, the sediment in the water settles. And as the settling proceeds, the water becomes more and more clear, more and more radiant, more and more mirror-like. And as part of your settling, when you feel ready, let your attention drop down to deep in your belly. Let your belly be loose and relaxed. The mind and the body help each other to be easy. As the mind grows easy, the body feels easy. As your body feels easy, your mind feels easy. And let that ease, whatever it feels like to you, be part of every cell, starting from your crown and moving down at your own pace. Every cell of your crown, your face, your cheeks, everything just kind of blossoming with ease. Your shoulders, arms. At your own pace, I'll give you a minute or two. And especially let your tender attention go to wherever there is seeming lack of ease in your mind or body, and just be easy in the face of it. Don't struggle with it. Just see it. And perhaps something will shift. Where there are knots in your being or your mind, tightness of any kind, that's a place to which you can bring your attention. Attention is the start of love. So in fact, just by paying attention, there's a certain loving that you're directing toward whatever it is that is a stress at this moment. And as you do that, you're not forgetting that your belly is easy and relaxed. You can kind of move back and forth between resting in whatever state of ease is accessible to you right now. You rest in that. And sometimes that makes it possible to see some kind of stress or worry or such. And then still within this state of ease, you can attend to it. just recognizing its presence. See how that is for you. And come back to your stillness, to your ease, to your rest. Just allowing the process of becoming easy and clear, like the settling of waves. Allowing that process to unfold. The arising of perhaps clarity, a little more clarity. When there's more clarity, part of what that can mean is there's a greater sense of space, openness, not being covered over with so many thoughts and feelings that it's like walking through a crowded supermarket. There's just stuff everywhere. The difference between that and walking into a vast, open room, uncluttered, becomes more like the state of your mind. You feel the difference. Come to know what clarity feels like to you. And in that space of clarity, invite someone who brings you a little bit of displeasure sometimes. A human, animal, or maybe a friend with whom you sometimes have a little bit of a testy relationship. So you've invited this person into your space. And allow that sense of irritation or dislike or wanting to get away from them. Allow that to be there to some degree. And what would change that feeling that you have about them? What is it that calls it forth, this feeling? The way they look at you or don't look at you, the way they dress, sound of the voice, history that you know something about that doesn't meet your approval. So pick one such thing and change it. So now the person smiles at you in a friendly way, or washes their hair, or wears something more pleasing, or somehow that past history is erased. And how is that? How does that affect you? Does it affect you? And you're still touching back every now and then into that state of easy, calm, sense of being really present in your relaxed belly. So even while you're aware of this sort of irritation or dislike, it's not consuming you because it's just part of your clarity. It's just what's going on right now in your mirror. So it's interesting to see what will affect it. And then thank them for being part of this for you and let them go if you wish. And how is that? Are you relieved? Do you miss them? Have you forgotten about them already? Your belly still relaxed? Your mind still clear? And bring in someone else. Friend, neutral person, disliked person, just someone who easily comes to mind. And go back to our opening aspiration, directed very precisely at this person, like you're looking them in the eyes, speaking from your heart, feeling in your heart. May you have happiness, happiness, real happiness, not like an ice cream cone that melts. May you have lasting happiness. May you have all the causes of happiness. May you continue to create the causes of happiness, your own positive actions. You're sending them all of your heart wishes. And they receive it. And you're still easy, and your belly is still relaxed, and you're still in your state of clarity. And finally, bring to mind what we know is the case, not too far, probably from where any of us are. People languishing, dying, in hospitals, on ventilators, in pain, alone. And how would it be? Still with your belly relaxed, your breathing coming in deep, exhaling, going out easy, to wish them happiness, the causes of happiness. And just for the sake of auspiciousness, at the very least, feel that you're sending, which is a kind of energy, is received and actually helps them. Somehow they grow easier, whatever the situation. How is that for you to imagine? To feel? Maybe it does help them somehow. And feeling that, in fact, now they are completely comfortable, completely easy, even radiant, even luminously radiant. Rest in knowing something of the joy that one must have who is able to offer happiness to another being, like you just did. And let that light you up from your heart, your crown, your whole torso, your arms, your legs, just shining with this aspiration. May all beings, the ones I like, the ones I don't, the ones I don't know, the ones whose suffering I somehow know about, even if I don't know them. May they all receive what they need. And let that light you up, that aspiration. And we'll bathe in that light, just sitting, just breathing for another minute or two. gonna. So love is so important. We've been talking about tenderness. We've been talking about the four boundless states. We've been talking about suffering, which really calls forth a certain kind of love, compassion. So how was that for you? Similar, but also a little different to what we've done before. And while you think of that no, okay. I can only see you on gallery view here because I forgot to change the. Anybody? I'll have to look here. How was that? Was it hard? Was it easy? Was it fun? Was it energizing? Was it boring? Was it conflictual? Don't want to think about all these other people. Anybody? Anything? Did anything happen? Did you think about something else entirely? Get lost in a story? Was it hard to do? To follow? Or not fun? Fun. Okay, Charlie. I can't hear you. You're still muted.
It says I cannot unmute myself.
No, we're being under very strict control here.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay. I like the exercise where we thought of a person
Mm-hmm.
and sent them the happiness and causes of happiness.
Mm-hmm. What was that like for you to do that?
Well, just thinking about it now, it made me happy to think about them. I know several people for whom this restrictions are more difficult than it is for me.
Mm.
And I'm concerned about them.
Mm.
So in sending out, as we sing at the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
the causes of happiness,
Mm-hmm.
it felt good for them to not be so distressed.
Mm. And that's what made you feel happy?
I think
Or
so.
was it something else? Yeah. Thank you. That's rather beautiful to observe, isn't it?
Yes.
For all the doubts we may sometimes have about our own motivations or just the possibility of feeling connected to other people in this way is kind of beautiful. Yeah, thank you.
So Anne, on Zoom, if you click on participants, it'll show you who has their hand raised on Zoom.
Oh, Harvey's always the one who does this. I haven't. Where do I find participant? Okay.
So do you see that Learned and Tiffany have blue hands?
Oh, okay. I thought Learned looked like he was going to talk, but he didn't raise his hand. So, okay, Learned and Tiffany. Excellent. Thank you. You want to start, Learned? I was reading your body English, even though I didn't see a hand.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted right now.
Yeah, I'm going to put this on gallery view while you, if you don't mind, because it's much nicer.
I felt like I was noticing that I had a bit of a contradictory response to some of the instructions, which was good in some cases or maybe helpful. Like just when you like I really appreciated the sort of first the exercise of bringing somebody in who makes us think of irritation, or sort of brings up a feeling of irritation. And you said something along the lines of, it's okay if you're irritated, if that's part of your experience, just kind of sit with it. And that gave sort of thinking about that, like it's okay for the irritation, oddly made it go away really quickly. Like it was sort of, okay, it's okay if I feel irritated. And then I kind of felt like, oh, this is very easy. Like it doesn't, I don't have to be feeling one way or another, or be feeling especially like virtuous towards them. So that kind of gave a feeling
for a moment. That's a big thing.
It felt nice in the moment. But then the flip side of it was
I just want to stop you with that, because it felt nice in the moment, and that's kind of a revelatory moment, isn't it? When you're allowed to feel irritated, which of course we've all been taught, Christian, Buddhist, whoever we are, or even just parenting, having parents, don't be angry, right? So getting permission, what I heard you say is getting permission to say, well, I feel irritated, and that was okay. And then you looked at it and you were, what was the word you used? And it went away.
Yeah, I might have said dissolve, but it kind of felt like it was sort of not there anymore. Sort of saying that it's okay to be irritated kind of made that feeling of, oh, here's why I'm irritated, kind of pass. And I think especially because there was, who is it that's irritating you? So I was thinking about, oh, here are the things that they do. And that kind of got me feeling a certain way. And then feeling it's okay to have that kind of made those thoughts pass and move on to the.
How interesting.
And that felt nice.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And then the flip side was, and then you said something along the lines of, you can let them go. And then it was weird, the irritation kind of came back for a second, even though that was like the moment that you are letting them go. And I kind of like for a second was like, oh, that really is quite irritating, even though I was letting them go in that moment. And that's when the irritation kind of like snapped back in. So I don't know, it's funny how your mind can sort of play tricks on itself is kind of what I was thinking.
Stunning. It's stunning. So you were irritated at letting the person go, or you were irritated back to being irritated at whatever you were irritated about before about the person?
I think it was the words to sort of, you can let them go. And it kind of almost put a block in my mind of, oh, I really can't do that. Or it's still the irritation. So it's like having the freedom to let them go kind of made me feel like I was irritated again in that moment. I get temporarily, like it lasted for, a few moments of time.
Right.
But it's funny, if I tell myself like, oh, I can be irritated, then I'm not irritated. If I'm like, oh, I can let them go, then kind of the irritation flashes for a second.
That's very interesting. I wonder what that was, if you were, we don't have time to unpack this in our microphenomenological way, but it's interesting, and it makes me wonder if, having succeeded in not being irritated with this person, that you were kind of enjoying it and like, I don't want to let him go now that I'm, it's quite interesting. It calls to mind, I think we've all read, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, and this wonderful phrase, how do you tame a horse? Give him a big pasture. It's a little like that.
Yeah.
Buddha nature, by the way, is a big pasture. So that really ties into all of those kinds of, Buddha nature, emptiness, wisdom. Thank you. I want to come back to this actually, because it's related to the theme that I was thinking I wanted to bring up tonight. So thank you for that. Meanwhile, Tiffany, you still want to talk? Good.
So I totally agree with what Learned was saying. That definitely happened with me. It was.
Tell me what happened. What happened?
Okay. Well, pretty much the minute you started to talk about bringing in somebody that brought up irritation, a fly landed on my lap, and I was like, "Oh, that's a nice opportunity." So I just kind of let it sit there, and it flew to my hands and started crawling up my arms, and I let it, and I let myself be irritated by it. And then all of a sudden it was like it was hugging me or tickling me or something completely different. It felt like enjoyable in a very odd way because there's like a lot of waves of irritation, like, no, I really don't like this, but
Uh-huh.
but I let it sit there, and it's kind of like, and when you started saying like imagine that thing they do that's really annoying, just imagine it not being there, I imagined it like not eating feces and eating ice cream instead or something like that.
Uh-huh.
And so I kind of became friends with that fly, and then when you said let it go, like the fly immediately just flew off, and I was like, wow, okay.
That's my Bodhisattva teacher for the day. So that's lovely, Epiphany.
It was pretty awesome.
And I have to thank the fly also. I hired him, but I didn't know if he'd show up. So if it's possible to recall, and if you're willing, can you go back to what might have occurred just in the moment before the fly, he or she, they became your friend? You said you were clear you were irritated, crawling, and they eat dirty things and they're crawling on your skin. And so there's some irritation. And then at some point, the fly became your friend. And what happened just before that?
Well, I kind of just looked at it really closely.
Oh,
Brought it up to my eyes and I saw like through its body and pretty much saw its wings and every part of it and
oh,
just examined it, and I was really curious about it
uh-huh.
and very calm about it rather than swatting
Oh.
it away.
Oh, how interesting.
Yeah.
So giving it attention, looking at it very closely, seeing it more precisely, more in direct perception in a way than this idea of a fly crawling up your arm, that shifted something.
Yes.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I brought out this phrase, which means a lot to me, that attention is the start of love, that when you start to pay attention to someone or something, at least that's my experience. And anyway, you have to pay attention to begin to be in a relationship, which has to be there for there to be, affection or even just dissolving irritation. So that's interesting to me that looking at the fly very closely would, create a shift. Yeah. Okay. I have to see if there are any other hands up. No. Well, the reason I was trying to do something that would okay, there's a two-part thing to this. I was remembering, as I think I've told some of you before, many years ago, I have, she became a good friend. She's actually a professional reader, a psychic reader, and really, really very excellent, not spacey or at all, just very concrete. Some of you have met her. And when we, in the old days, when we used to have time, we would hang out and get ideas of things that we could do to use her talent. And once I wanted to sing some Tibetan prayers to her, not to her exactly, but just sing them and have her, because she can read energy, and to see what was happening actually when those prayers were, in the room. She doesn't understand Tibetan. So I recited, I think, what we used to always say, Geshe Wango's prayers in the morning. And at the end is exactly this in Tibetan, this fourfold aspiration that we say. And then I stopped. And she said, I've seen something that I never saw before. Now, she sees people for 25, 30 years, she has clients. So she's read a lot of people. She has amazing experiences with that. And they have amazing experiences. She said, I've never seen this before. I said, what? She said, well, that there's actually the possibility that everyone in the world could be happy, could have happiness. And I was just blown away, because this is what it was specifically around these verses, which, as I said, she didn't understand in Tibetan. I hadn't told her anything about what I was going to recite. She just picked up on it. And And that's a really profound possibility to consider, especially these days, that there is somehow that possibility that everyone could be happy. And as I was reflecting today, I was going to bring up our Naga princess again, who the 8-year-old girl who offered a jewel to the Buddha and then just like that became enlightened, even though Shariputra told her that she couldn't possibly because she was a girl and she was too young, if you remember that story. And of course, that's the story of Buddha nature also, that everyone has this possibility. So it's really a very profound thing to consider, and kind of crazy because who can, in one way, we can't even go outside now, and all kinds of disruption are on our path, and that there is this possibility. So that was one thing. And then the other thing, I was reflecting on some of the other stories. One of the paradigmatic stories that we love in all religious traditions is the wanton, horrific, angry, dangerous, just devastatingly bad person who gets it in the end, is transformed, the prodigal son. Or in the Buddhist tradition, our friend Angulimala, right? He collects the thumbs of 999 people. He's ready to kill the 1,000th, but the 1,000th is the Buddha. And he meets the Buddha, as you remember the story, and he's astonished because the Buddha neither runs away in fear, tries to attack him, or shows any fear himself. So Angulimala says, "Who are you?" And the Buddha says, I'm someone who has stopped. Can you stop? And of course, he's talking about the stopping of the swirl of our own habits and passions and misery that results from that. And he goes on to become an arhat in that very life. And I think these stories are very powerful when we hear of, or Milarepa, he was a real bad boy, murdering people with his powers, thunder and lightning. That's as bad as it gets in the Buddhist traditions. And I feel that these stories, one thing that they help us see is that whatever is rotten in Denmark, in our Denmark, whatever is our irritation, to take a small example, we all know, especially the more we strive to be awakened, the more we hear about Buddha nature, we can't help but notice that there's all this stuff going on that doesn't seem to have much to do with Buddha nature that we really think we need to get rid of, or we want to turn our back on. And what seems to be the case is that when that is no longer being framed as a problem in quite the same way, transformation can occur. So I was trying to figure out what kind of a meditation we could do that would yield itself to that theme. So I'm very happy to learn it and Tiffany to speak, because that's kind of exactly what I was wondering if it might show up, that, yeah, you have this irritation, and then look what it led to in both of your cases. For you, Tiffany, somehow it was part of the process of you really, okay, I'm not just going to look away at this fly, which is a fairly disgusting creature given its eating habits, but I'm just going to look at it and see what's there and see its wings, which are actually kind of translucent and colorful in the bright sunlight that you still seem to have there in El Paso. And, and Learned, you said that your irritation, once you stop like, oh, I'm not supposed to do this, we're supposed to be, it gives way to something else. And it's almost like it is the food for this other thing to occur, to feel in the end happy that oh, yeah, I could hang out with this person after all without being irritated. And, oh, I could feel happy imagining someone else being happy. So that's the importance of, when we identify the 5 poisons, of course, we're also taught that there are things not to take up. But we also have to learn in the process of cultivating just honesty and awareness and a mirror-like mind. And then when we get into, more advanced trainings, really recognizing that there's some energy tied up in that irritation. It's like available fuel in a way. It's available and could potentially become something else, as it did in your reflections today. And it seems really important. It's like another part of, Harvey's been talking for a while about, and we've done some exercises around looking at ourselves, feeling tender toward ourselves, as well as tender toward people around us who are suffering, the world itself, the earth herself, that tenderness. And that's a very important aspect of our growth as a human being, to be able to include ourselves in the wholeness, the boundless love that we are. It's not boundless if it doesn't include you, right? And so they're like clusters of skills that we develop as practitioners. And one is recognizing, well, you know what? I'm not supposed to be angry, but you know what? It's there. I've got it. And then be tender about that. Okay, you've had a hard day. You're angry. That's the way it is. And then also what we're beginning, I think, to see in this conversation is that it's not only that we can be, although that's that's months and years to lifetime to just be able to accept and be honest and say, well, yeah, this is how it is. And, I'm a human being. It's going to happen. It's not that big a deal, but it's something to acknowledge. And alongside of that is the possibility of there's actually some fuel here. There's actually some tied up energy here that could, transform into another possibility. I mean, I don't think it's an accident that these prodigious figures, let's say in the Buddhist tradition, Milarepa, Angulimala, and in one of the stories that I might or might not get to today, that they go from having this, he didn't just have a couple of bad habits, he murdered people. And yet somehow there was this availability to turn all of that anger and hatred into a complete open space that Buddha could, or the teaching could, or his own mind nature could, illuminate in some way. And then that's done, that's gone. And, when we look at our own experience, even the simple experience like Learned and Tiffany shared, I think we all have experiences like that. We're really, really angry or sometimes really depressed, which is a very hard kind of state, and you can't really do anything about it. And then, bam, one day it's just gone. You don't know why. And you feel great. Something is like fog lifting. So when I think of that princess and her jewel and her recognizing the jewel that she is, and us being encouraged always, always, always to recognize that the jewel that we are, yeah, maybe it's buried in muck. Of course it is. But we are not the mud. Angulimala was not his murderous mind. Milarepa was not his outrage at the injustice done his family. It was powerful and consuming, but in the end, that was not all he was, and it's not all we are either. That seems really important to see. You know, we're not murderers, but we have our days, right? Our bad hair days, our bad hair moments. And then sometimes after that, it's like the sun after a storm. And somehow the storm makes that, you know, it's even fresher. It's even better than the sun just day after day. What do you think about that? Does that resonate with anything in your experience? Oh, hand up, Chindati.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
This question is a little bit off the track of what you asked. It came up when you said, "Can you imagine everyone to be happy?"
Mm.
So one time, I actually, it says in the scriptures that samsara is never empty, if that's correct, but that's what I was taught once. And so that never actually made sense to me.
Oh, until samsara, I'm not sure what you're thinking of. There's a famous thing that we will be, you know, we will strive for as long as the world exists until samsara is empty. Samsara is described as endless, but still we aspire to be with suffering until it's empty. Maybe
Right, but so if it never is empty, then it never really made sense to me how everyone can be happy then.
you know, yeah, it's a puzzle. Keizen Saba once said, he told Don Lopez that if he thought about that too much, he would go crazy. But we will not go crazy. I think he was playing with Don. You know, in Zen, they say living beings are numberless. I vow to save them all. Samsara is endless. I vow to free it. Samsara may be endless in general, but your samsara is not, right? When you become liberated, for you, everything is liberated. And you know that everyone has that possibility without exception. And that seems to be the point for us. This isn't like a scientific narrative where we have to, but there are I mean, every day in meditation, we imagine that we empty samsara. We enlighten, everybody becomes Tara or Vajrasattva, or dissolves with us into reality. And that's our reality, a reality to experience from our perspective, which is all we ever have, actually.
Well, I wonder how that works because
Yeah, it's good to wonder.
You know, even if you liberate it and then there is like an awareness that people still suffer, then maybe you're not as liberated as you think. I don't know.
I think it's both and. You know, Avalokiteshvara shed a tear when he realized people were still suffering. Doesn't mean the enlightenment actually seems to make one very tenderhearted. A lot of courage. I've seen the greatest teachers in my life have tears in their eyes occasionally for others suffering. And I think it's very important. You know, we aren't trying to become immune to caring about other beings, but we are, it is a kind of conundrum and it's worth exploring. There is a way, you know, as the Dalai Lama said, you know, I have a really hard life. He really does. Lost his country, lost everything, suffering of his, we know, right? Really hard. People come to him year after year telling him their tragic lives, and he weeps. But as he was telling this once, he said, but you can see if you look at me that, you know, he weeps, but he is radiant also. Somehow those two are not in contradiction.
Yeah. But then it means then that suffering cannot end. I mean, that's the whole point, you know, the end of suffering, the Fourth Noble Truth. So there is cessation. So if there's no cessation,
but
somehow
every living being has the possibility of ending their suffering. And the way to the start of that is for us to aspire to that and aspire to become free enough ourselves that we are no longer bogged down by, this sense of limitation.
Yeah, I guess it's it's always a snake biting its in its own tail to think about that kind of. I guess it's something the mind cannot wrap itself
Well,
around.
you can think about it as a kind of philosophical riddle. I encourage us to think about it as a way of going into our own experience, because I think that's actually where it's most meaningful. Can you, Jandati, just let yourself imagine that you could be completely free from suffering and that you will continue to help everybody else until they are, without going into your head about it, just like we do when we do Vajrasattva, when we do any of our practices, right? We imagine that we liberate the whole world. And can you allow yourself to have that openness? I think that's the question. And I know it's like, just like irritation might come up when we try to cultivate love, it's very natural and understandable. And I'm certainly there myself, I've had that, oh no, but it can't be. It's just the mind chattering. The mind really has no idea whether this can happen or not. And we're just trying to get out of that jail that our mind puts us in, and honestly, in practice. And feel, can you feel it? Can you allow yourself to imagine it? And if not, then look at whatever stops it and kind of like Learned and Tiffany did, just let it be there. That's really our work. So I'm going to stop with that. But thank you. It's
Thank
important. It's important. There are so many interesting ideas, puzzles, conundrums in the Buddhist tradition, in any tradition. And the mind can just go. And of course, we're intelligent and we want to learn and we do want to think about these things. And I applaud that. I mean, I think about them. I think it's valuable, but it's not the end game. Really, really, the purpose of all of that is to be able to look at our own experience. So I thank everybody who has shared that. Okay, Stephanie, we're 1 minute over, but it's Jack. Okay. Then we'll hear from Jack, and I will read you one very short thing, and we will close.
The only thing I was going to say about that conversation is when Steph and I watched the 52 episodes of the Buddha from India, the thing that struck me about the Buddha was that there was suffering around the Buddha always, but the Buddha had equanimity. No matter, it wasn't like that. So the Buddha wasn't suffering because there was suffering. So the Buddha was not right. So everyone can get. It doesn't mean that there won't be. It doesn't mean a volcano won't go off if you're not. And you might be meditating under the volcano and disappear into the volcano. It doesn't mean that those things won't happen. It just means that you are at peace with whatever happens, and there's no. There's just this. There's just Zen. I don't know what the word is. That's all. I'll leave it at that.
Reality. Yeah, exactly. In reality, it looks different. He has not only equanimity, apparently, but bliss. Yeah. And yet there's the bodhisattva called always crying. So it's like the full possibility is there. And you're quite right, but it's not like suffering. It's like the proverbial water off a duck's back, perhaps. Thank you. That's very sweet and very relevant. And if I can find what I wanted to read you, I will. Otherwise, I can't. Okay. Somebody posted this today, and I shared it, actually, and posted it. And I wanted to just read a piece of it for you. It starts like this. Grandma, how can I live in this quarantine? My daughter, Quarantine is a special, mysterious, and sacred period. In my days, newborn children could only leave the house for the first time after their 40th day of life. It is a period of waiting and preparing for a new life. It is a period that produces a great change. And how do you prepare for this change? With simple, genuine, and loving actions. Every morning, comb your long hair with dedication and untie all the knots, even the most hidden ones that you have always neglected. It is time to put all the knots in the comb. Then, dedicate yourself to untangling even your beloved knots. With patience, you will try to find the end of the thread, the exact starting point of the thread. Already, with these simple but powerful actions, you will create order outside and inside of you. Undoing physical knots with your hands, you will begin to touch your internal knots. So that's what we were working with, in my mind anyway. And it's lovely to see you. And I'll read, let's see, I look in the chat, Emily, for the, do I have the right computer to look at the prayers? Is Emily there?
Yes, that should be the right one, and people should have sent them to you privately.
Okay. Yes. All right. So we'll do our dedication. By this good may I swiftly once become a great guru, lead all beings, everyone, to reach to that very ground. With all of you in mind, we light this lamp of clarity. May the glow of love, wisdom shine within us, everyone, till we all rise forth born in one enlightened mandala. And we wish this for all beings throughout space, past, present, and future. And especially today for Joanne Jackson, Andy Jackson, our lamas, our sangha, all lamas and all sanghas, our skylit home, all suffering children, COVID Shantim Kuriye Soha, Louise Hetu and Carol Gautier in the Bardo, Nam Vo, Harvey, Donald Trump, Krishnavatana, Sylvia, Rolando, Nathaniel, Leah, Jerry, and family. I'll add Rebecca Pine and Joanne, Ogan, Michelle, Max. And for them, all the people suffering from COVID for whatever aspect. Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely rest of your evening, weekend, 11 o'clock, as usual, Sunday meditation. Be back here on Tuesday. And then we won't be doing these hours. In May, we start our retreats, and we'll see some of you there. Take good care. You can unlock everybody. Emily, if people just want to say hi to each other. Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Good night. Yay. Thank you, Emily and Gary, for shepherding us through this. Good night. Which machine do I leave the meeting on, Emily? The one here or the one over there? The one that Harvey usually does over, do you know?
I'll leave the meeting and Harvey will turn them all off.
Oh, okay. Okay. Bye, everybody. Take good care. Glad to see you. Hi, Mark. Ciao.
Emily, do you need anything from me for trauma?
I might. I got permission from Emily not to freak out about it.
Okay.
A little more time. So I've made all the changes that are needed, but
Okay.
The Omaha, there are a couple things. I don't know if it's just my printer because they look right on the file, but they don't print out yet.